Welcome to the Successful Life Podcast. I am your host, Corey Barrier, and I'm here with Alex Spinoso. Did I say that right, Spinosa?
Yeah, you did.
All right,
That's
fantastic. Usually I completely butcher the fuck out of everybody's last name.
cool.
Or I just can't pronounce it at all. Fortunately, yours was a little easier. So, Alex, I was just talking with Alex a little bit about, Alex and I share similar interests in that he owns a hormone replacement. That is correct. You do
hmm
peptides and hormone replacement. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and as you all probably know by now, I used to have a hormone replacement facility or medical spa, whatever you want to call it. And so, we were just talking about his medical clothing line, which is called PC Threads. So,
hmm
Alex, I know it's a little bit out of order, but can you can you tell me that story again of how you started up it's essentially a scrubs, right?
Yes. Yeah. Medical scrubs.
Okay.
Yeah. So last year when I was in the RTA the first year, I met my business partner in that, Louis Chapa, who's an ER physician out of Texas. And he called me up one day, asked if I was tired of doing medicine all the time. And I said, yeah, absolutely. He's like, you want to do something else? I said, hell yeah. What do you want to do? So he came up with the idea of doing some sort of athletic clothing or clothing in general. And after talking for a while, we kind of narrowed it down to doing scrubs or medical scrubs, something within the medical field. We figured, hey, let's stick to our strengths. We looked at all our competitors. None of our competitors were actually run by any type of physician in the medical field. So we were like, you know what? Let's build scrubs, for other providers.
Isn't
By
that
providers.
interesting though? That
Yeah.
that nobody, like, they wouldn't have a medical person on their board or somebody, trickling down.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of them were run by nurses or had like a nurse as part of their first group, kind of with the idea, but there were no physicians. There was no doctors doing it. So we're
Interesting.
just like, you know what, let's try and let's do this. So we looked at a bunch of different providers for our materials and stuff. And our very first meeting was in downtown LA at the Fashion District. So we went down there to look for people that could create these clothings for us. And Lewis and my partner and our third partner, Paul, flew out from San Antonio to LA. We met in downtown LA in the Fashion District, and we walked into this building that was supposed to be the best company for materials and creating medical scrubs. They had medical scrubs as their one of the things that they did.
Oh,
So
okay. That makes
yeah,
sense. Okay.
we walk in there, and from the very beginning, it was like we were in a movie. It was something out of a cartoon. This Swedish guy greets us. He's got a Swedish national team yellow jersey on. He's got this yellow, blonde, long Fabio-looking hair, and he has the thickest Swedish accent. And we walk in there, and he just starts giving us all these materials. He's like, hello, everybody. How is you? Is all our materials. They are the nicest materials that you can imagine. And so we're going through all these materials, and he's like, yes, this one is probably the best for the athletic clothing. And you can tell there's a disconnect between like medical clothing and athletic clothing, because he's showing us really thin, dry fit stuff. He's like, this will be the good for the blood. You don't get the blood on this. And it's like, it's really not going to work. It's going to tear the first time you go to, give somebody compressions or something. So we sit there and we finally pick out a thick material that we liked that was kind of like Lululemon or a thicker quality to it. And we sit down and we say, okay, this is how much we need. We would like, how fast can you get us a sample? And he's like,
So,
what?
like a sample. So you go ahead. Yeah. Sample.
Yeah.
Got it.
So we figured, hey, we got the material. He's going to cut it into a sample of what we kind of want, and then we could try it on, and then we'll order more from him, and then he'll just produce the clothing, and we'll be good, right? No, turns out it doesn't go that way. So he looks at us funny. He's like, what's a sample? And he's like, yeah, how fast can you make it into like a garment? He's like, no, silly, we don't make it into a garment. You need a cutting place for that. We do not cut and sew. And it was like, what do you mean you don't cut and sew? Like, you have the material there. No, you need a factory for that. I can give you some. You come back when you need me. So it was like, okay.
So they just sold like yards of material. I get. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, so that's all they did was sold yards of material. So going back, we back to square one. Literally Googled, okay, what are the steps to creating medical scrubs? Follow the steps and realize that there are multiple steps to creating a clothing line. For nothing, not everything's in house. So usually you go to a place to get the materials. Then you take those materials and you go to a designer who cuts the materials into a sample. And then you take that sample and then you test the materials for what it's necessary, antimicrobial, four-way stretch, etc. And then once that passes, then you go to a different company and they're the ones who actually can produce it on a large scale. And then that goes to shipping company who sends it over to us, etc.
Now, do you have to have it made by a specific person because it's medical?
No. So
Okay.
well, it doesn't have to be made by a specific person. However, it has to be made by a company who can treat clothing.
Okay.
So usually most bigger companies can do treatment of clothing. You can't do like a mom and pop shop because you have to send the material to get treated for antimicrobial and stuff like that. So we found that out later that it was all different steps. So when we went back to square one, we're like, okay, let's just find a company who could do everything from A to Z. Finally found a company that could do that. And 10 months later, or about 8 months later, we had a sample, and about 9 months later, we had all of our stuff ready to go.
That's pretty incredible. So do you sell it primarily online? Do you have a store?
Right now, it's all e-commerce. Yep,
Okay.
all online. Absolutely, starting all online and everything. It's going pretty well. With any type of clothing brand, we're like, yeah, right out of the gate, we're gonna kill it. It's gonna be like 8 figures and stuff. It's like, well, it's clothing, so you have to go. It's got to be slow. People have to wear it. Once people wear it or feel it, they feel how amazing it is. But you can't feel, a computer screen,
Right.
and you don't want to do the retail store right away because although people can feel it, you have to pay for all the overhead, people to be standing in the retail store, all the
Right. And
clothing you have to
it's
stock in there, just waiting for people to walk in.
well, that and it's a specialty item, sort
Yeah.
of. I mean, there's a shit ton of medical people on the planet, but it's still a niche,
Yep,
right?
absolutely is. No,
So
you're right. It absolutely is.
interesting. Okay. I think that's super. I think that's awesome because most of the scrubs, like, there's several brands, but
Yeah.
none of them are fantastic. Like, they're just not.
Yeah, it's a $22 billion industry and they make mostly garbage.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, why can't we made our own materials, our own blend, made sure that it was better than anything else out there, thicker than anything else out there, as well as could like hold up to somebody actually working for a long period of time. And we got tired of wearing the same garbage over and over and over. So
Sure. Now, what does it? I have to ask this. Does it stay? Does the blood stain?
yeah,
Does it still stain the material pretty bad?
no, not at all because it's stain. We have stain resistant. So
Okay.
it's like pet dander, stain resistant, four-way stretch, antimicrobial, everything like that. So no, it doesn't stain these at all.
That's awesome because that was, there are several brands that you get blood on it and it's done. Well,
Yep.
you're in the
Yeah,
medical field. You're going to get blood on you at some point.
absolutely. And you can't afford to be buying brand new scrubs every single time.
No, because they're expensive as shit.
Yep.
Like, I'm surprised. I was shocked at how expensive they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also designed it so that people can wear it out. So if you have a long shift or whatever, you go to wear your scrubs out, it looks like you're in scrubs most of the time.
Sure.
We made more designer ones with different cuts of the neck and Henleys and stuff like that, where if you wore it out, it just looked like you're wearing like more of a dressier shirt out or dressier
Nice.
top out, both for males and females. Because it was just like, I mean, you work all the time. You don't want to be that douche who is lifting in your scrubs and it's obvious that you're lifting or obvious that you're out at, drinks with friends in your scrubs.
Right. 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 Yeah, that makes total sense. So, Alex, I want you to let's go back for a minute. That's kind of one of the things that you're presently doing. But let's go back, and I want you to tell the listeners about how you got to be how you got to be a doctor. What made you think about being a doctor, and childhood. How was that? Just take us through the whole gambit.
Yeah. So let's see. I was born in Northern California, Mather Air Force Base. My dad was in the Air Force. My mom was a banker at that time, and then when my sister was born 4 years later, quit that to be full-time mom. And then my dad built his own business. So he was an entrepreneur since very young. That was 22, 23.
Okay.
Started that HVAC business, still has it, still runs it, has a few employees now. It's taken him about 30 years to hire employees because he grew up in that, if you want to do it right, you better do it yourself.
Right.
So I grew up learning how to build everything. I can fix anything, etc. I'm only now realizing that sometimes it's cheaper to just hire an expert to do it rather than do it yourself.
It really is. Lots of times.
It is. That was a big lesson to learn. Take 3 hours cutting the grass yourself, or just pay some guy, $50, a quarter of what you make hourly to do it. It's like, well, why wouldn't I just do that? But I went to school back east at Dartmouth for 4 years, and then after that, I went to England for medical school. So I got into medical school in England, and I actually went over there for the sole reason of playing soccer. I wanted to play professional soccer over there. So I played semi-professional a bit over there, and was kind of doing both medical school and the soccer thing at the same time. And I had to choose one or the other because I was just kind of failing at both, because it was really burning the wick at both ends and wasn't working out well. So I chose the thing that I thought I'd have a longer career in, was obviously the glory of medicine.
Right.
I grew up blue collar, so you grew up thinking that medicine was the end all be all in terms of the money pit, and man, I'm going to make millions of dollars and stuff like that. Maybe 50 years ago, but
Right.
nowadays, doctors are not making what people think, and even though people think we make money off of medications or vaccines or any of that shit, you don't make any of that money. There's none of that income coming to us. That's all to big pharma and the drug companies.
So that's facts. I think that's an interesting point. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said that, because a
Yeah.
lot of people do believe that doctors, they write certain prescriptions because that's what they get kickbacks on. Now in China, that is the case.
Yeah.
100%.
In the U.S. 50 years ago, it was the case too.
Right. But
It's
that's
not
no, because that's totally unethical.
Yeah, not only that, like the anti-kickback laws that were put into place, I have no idea, maybe 20 years ago, really just crushed a lot of that. We can't even accept pens sometime from certain drug companies. Like they're that stickler. And if you ever go to a dinner from a pharmacy rep or anything like that, you're supposed to actually report that to the physician
as income.
As income every single time.
Interesting.
So it's actually really it's gotten really bad for physicians who are in the medical, who are like working for the hospital or anything like that, where you can't. And it's good. You can't profit off of all these things, but it's not the money making machine where if I give you all these drugs, I'm making all this money. No, it doesn't work like that at all. You don't get any kickbacks from anybody. You treat people the way you feel like they need to be treated. In the end, you get what you get. That's about it. So it's a good thing, but it is also an unfortunate thing because doctors don't make what people think that they make.
Sure.
So you really have to, you really are selling yourself for a very expensive hourly wage. That's pretty much what you do. You have a very expensive hourly wage. So I went to work once I graduated, I went to work for a prison because prisons had the best hourly wage. Plus, I wanted to do a lot of sports medicine, and that was all prison was. All it was fighting, stabbing. All they did was play sports all day long, weight lift injuries, etc. So it was pretty much 80 to 90% sports medicine, and the rest was just like primary care stuff because it was like taking care of a bunch of MMA fighters every single day.
That's
So
interesting. Let me just pause you for a second because when you said sports medicine, the last thing I thought you would say next is
yeah.
a prison.
Mm-hmm.
But you made some valid points. You're right. They are. I've never been to prison, but I know people that have, and I know that fight like hell. And I didn't know about the sports and stuff. That's such an interesting way to look at it because I would have never in a million years looked at it that way. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked into being a trainer or being a doctor for professional athletes and stuff like that. And the more I shadowed people or even when I was playing, I realized that the doctor was kind of useless. They're not, I mean, they know what they're talking about. However, it's the manager and the coach that they're accountable to. So if you tell them that the $10 million a year player can't play, they're really not going to listen to you. They're going to listen to the player. And so I mean, look at the NFL. Was it 3 weeks ago where they put two guys in that had concussions back into the play, and the quarterback couldn't even, fucking see down the field, and they just threw them back in the game. I mean, those guys could have died on a second impact on their heads. So it's just, I didn't want to be a part of that professional world because the doctors, albeit they're great at what they do, they're not really taken seriously. So I
Oh,
wanted to
that's
do something
great.
where people were taken more seriously. So actually, it was funny because prison was the place where you get taken the most the seriously as a physician, and the prisoners actually are appreciative of what you do. So a lot of people say, "Well, is it safe? Like, or did you feel worried?" I never felt honestly, I never felt safer in the prison than I did out in the real world. Because in the real world, anybody could come in and shoot me in the head at any time if they were pissed off, into any ER, into any urgent care, etc.
Sure.
In the prison, you're surrounded by double fence and electric fence. You got armed guards everywhere. You know that none of them have guns. They might have a pokey knife that they could stab you with, but that's about it. And at the end of the day, they are appreciative of all the doctors and all the nursing care because those are the only people inside the prison that will take care of them. Everybody else, the guards, et cetera, and stuff, they know that they're going to fight or there's going to be issues sometimes, et cetera. It's all built around respect, that whole field. And that world is built around respect. I respect you, you respect me. You get it back and forth. And they know that if they stab each other or if they kill each other and they've pissed off the doctor or tried to hurt the doctor, he's the only one that's going to keep them alive, so they're probably not going to survive. So
Hmm.
it's
So
very small. It's very just respect based.
that's so interesting. Do you mind asking what prison it
Yeah.
was?
So I started my career at Ironwood State Prison. It's in Blythe, right on the edge of California and Arizona. And
Okay.
then I actually moved to a little south of that to Calipatria State Prison. So it's a little south, almost at the border of California, Mexico.
So what
Oh,
kind of injuries did you see? I guess really that list is endless.
oh yeah. I mean, puncture wounds, a lot of puncture wounds from stabbings, from shanks and stuff like that. I mean, we would find shanks that were made out of Jolly Ranchers, Technicolor shanks, because Jolly Ranchers are super hard. And when you
Yeah.
melt them and when you melt them together into a pike, it makes a really hard pike. And all you need is one stab when you have a pike 7 inches long, right? So,
Gosh.
I mean, different highlighters cut out to make a handle for a steak, and lots of try to slice necks, and cuts on the arms, and broken arms, broken hands, lots of blowout fractures of the face from getting hit in the face with things,
Oh.
tons. And then
So
on the
let
opposite side, you see rubber bullet wounds from them trying to get them to stop, or a lot of asthmatics with breathing issues that we had to stabilize because you hit them with the it's not tear gas, but it is they have the regular face spray, pepper spray, and then they have these pepper spray bombs that explode, and they're a powder. So those things really like mess up people's lungs
oh
for
God.
sure. So yeah, we kind of saw everything under the sun.
That's incredible. I guess no day was dull there.
Yeah, it wasn't. It really wasn't. It'd be like the most normal day, and then you got two guys coming in with puncture wounds that are bleeding out, and one guy is like choking to death on the pepper spray.
God bless.
Yeah, it was
All right.
wild.
So you how long did you work in the prison?
So I worked in the prison, actually exactly 3 years, almost to the day.
Okay. And then what made you, what was the next step?
Yeah, about a year and a half into, so this was only actually 2016.
Okay.
So I got out of residency 2016. I started working in the prison right away. About a year and a half into it, I started listening to Andy Frisella's podcast. A few months later, he had Ed Milet on, so I started listening to Ed's podcast. What joined the First Form Legionnaires as part of their, affiliate reps for their supplement company, because I lived in the bodybuilding world, was already doing bodybuilding, so I took supplements all the time. So started using their stuff January 1st of 2018. And at that moment, I was working in the prison. I was living the good life, first form rep, et cetera, doing a lot of the self-improvement stuff. And then Andy, I was saving up to do Andy's business school, because he had been announcing for a long time that he was going to do some sort of business school. And I had gone back to get my MBA. I got my MBA at that point already, but it wasn't really any hands-on business stuff that I had gotten. And I knew that I wasn't going to, I thought I was going to work in the prison forever, work there 20 years. I retire when I'm 50. It'll be great. Then I could go and do another job for 20 years and retire when I'm 70. I'll have a double pension when I'm 70. That really all changed and went out the window after listening to Andy and Ed. And then Andy talked, it was like in February, and he had talked about on his story how he talked to a group of ophthalmologists, eye doctors that were making, good money, 500, 600K a year, and how they'd all become complacent. They all were just happy with what they were getting, and they didn't want to improve. They didn't want to get better. And he's like, never be that way. Always improve. And I had been really unhappy like January, February of that year. And I couldn't figure out why. I had a really good job. I had a beautiful wife. Like, what the hell is going on? And it was just that I had become complacent. It was the same shit every single day. I was bringing home a great amount of money, but it was just the same shit over and over. I wasn't improving. I wasn't challenging myself. So I was like, okay, well, I want to probably try and build my own business. So I'm going to need some money to do that. And it started off with the idea of wanting to build urgent cares.
Okay.
So my wife and I moved out of our house. We started renting our house, and on the weekends through a company, and on the weekends we would go live in a hotel or live at her parents' house, etc. And finally we're like, okay, well, let's just move out completely. So we moved out completely from our house that we owned, rented it, and lived in a little master bedroom. We rented a master bedroom in a house with like 6 other people who lived there.
So, all right. So just so I could totally understand, you're out of medical school. You
Yep.
have a great job. You've
Yep.
got a beautiful wife. You guys are married.
Yeah.
You have your house.
Yeah.
And then you decide to fucking just basically move out of the house, rent it, right? So you can save money for the next step. That's pretty impressive, because I don't know too many people that would think of doing that.
Yeah, we went backwards.
Yeah,
we went backwards a lot. It was really hard. It was really, really hard for me to go backwards like that. Being a 31-year-old doctor, and we moved out of our house that we owned to really just just slum it. It was, our rent was like $700 a month, all inclusive, in this tiny little room that we had everything in. Everything we owned was inside this little room.
So what did that do to your relationship? Or
it was horrible. No, it was horrible.
Okay.
It was horrible. Like, you feel inadequate as fuck, because you're supposed to be the provider. You have a really good job as a physician. I had a really good job. So that made it even worse, where you feel like I could afford that life,
Right.
afford it. Would I be growing at all, or would I be building something more than that? No, but I could afford that life. And so it was really, really hard on the relationship. We had multiple fights and multiple arguments, and it took me a while to realize that she was sacrificing just as much as I was, because, albeit she was a server, but I felt it was okay for me to be a dick because I was making more money and paying for things, etc. And so it created even more strife, even more issues, and it was rough because I think a lot of it stemmed from me feeling inadequate because we were moving out of the house, and also at the same time getting into the Arte Syndicate, which was, in the middle of this. We had moved out only about 3 or 4 months before I got into the syndicate, and then seeing all these entrepreneurs that are just absolutely killing it at life. So it was like, no matter what, even though people say, well, don't compare your first chapter to somebody else's 10th chapter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're an A-type personality, you're going to fucking compare yourself to people, period. It's just how it's going to fucking be.
I agree.
And it took me about a year after that to realize, okay, you know what? I am younger than most of the people in the Arte Syndicate, but then again, I chose to be a doctor. So I didn't have a chance to do anything until I was 30 years old and out of school. And then I had to realize, like, look, it's going to be, like Andy says, no matter all the money in the fucking world, you cannot beat time. You cannot speed up time. So it's just like, okay, well, it's just going to take time.
And how many times would you say, I know for me in my life, I've wished that I was where XYZ is, right? So I've wished, wow, when I'm 50, I'll be where that guy is. And I wish I could just jump forward to that. And that's such small thinking.
It is. It really is. And like, I'll tell you the truth. I still am very young with my entrepreneurship thinking. So I still think about it almost every day. Almost every day. There's a little glimpse of like, fuck, I wish. And it doesn't help that I have really awesome friends who are killing it out here in Vegas. So you go over to their house and you see all their shit, like their Lamborghinis and their sick cars and their beautiful homes. And you're like, fuck, damn it.
But they're older.
But then you got to remember, okay, 5 years, that's 5 years from now. That's 5 years older is the youngest guy who's closest to me. That's 5 years from now. That's 10 years from now, etc. You gotta calm yourself down, Alex. You're not that far behind. You just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and you're making such smart decisions for somebody who's gotten as far as you have and built this life after going through. I look at medical school. I mean, that's got to be a fucking nightmare to an extent.
Oh, it is. I was up for, you're up for 4 days in a row. I mean, just pounding caffeine, hopefully not killing somebody because, your decision-making is not as good as it used to be, 72 hours ago. It's like doing a marathon every single day of the mind. It breaks a lot of people. That's why there's so many dropouts in medical school. They unfortunately build the schools and build the residencies to break you.
Wow. Well, I mean, I guess I appreciate that to an extent because, I know when I go and get treated by my doctor, I know what he's been through, he or she. Yeah. I know what they've been through. And guess what? If heaven forbid I walk outside and get my face eaten off by a dog, and I've got to have a 20-hour surgery, I know that he or she can fucking do that because he's done it 3 or 4 times more than what the situation calls for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
It's important, as much as unfortunate as it is for you doctors. Mm-hmm. There may come a time when you really fucking need that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. So when So back to February, I wasn't happy. Andy says this thing. He went quiet actually about the school that he was building. So I was like, oh, well, shit, I have this money saved up for that school. Let's just roll it into a business. I thought I wanted to build an urgent care at the time. And then he announced the Arte Syndicate. And I don't know what it was about it. I was just like, you know what? I feel like I have to be a part of this. This is something that I know I have to be a part of. I didn't think I'd get in. I applied during intermission of a Jethro Tull concert in Sacramento.
Who was it?
Jethro Tull. So he's an old school rocker, the first guy to like play the flute in rock music, and he used to kill it. And man, he's like 80 years old now, and it was awful. It was awful. You go there expecting like old school rock and roll, and it was just like a bunch of guys that were good on their instruments, but they could not sing because they were like all 80 years old. It was rough. It was rough.
That's hilarious.
So I was like, you know what? I'll just apply to this thing. I'm not going to get in anyways. I'll just try. And then I got accepted, and the rest is really history. After I got accepted, I met a ton of new people in the Arte, people that were at the next level that could help with my thinking, people that get it. And that's the big thing you know as well, is that people don't understand that you want to improve. People don't understand, okay, you're a doctor. Why would you move out of the house that you live in? That doesn't make sense. Or why don't you have a nice car? Like, aren't you a doctor? You have to have a nice car. They don't get going backwards. They don't get the struggles. They don't get well, why can't you just be happy with what you have? Well, I am happy with what I have, but that doesn't mean I can't want more.
Sure.
For not only myself, but for other people. So if I have, people don't understand that if you have a fuckload of money, you can give away a fuckload of money to change a ton of lives.
Yes.
If you have a little bit of money, yeah, you could give a little bit of money away. But a person who has billions of dollars is going to be able to change people's lives, whether they do or don't, a lot more, and a lot more lives than people who don't.
Absolutely. 100%. And you're right. Not everybody does that with their money, but the people that do, history shows, and it repeats itself. The people that give away a vast majority of their income usually are the most, they're for sure the richest in their own mind, so to speak. That was really not the best way to put it, but I know you get it. I'm trying to paint the picture for the listeners that, like,
they are the most fulfilled. You go from I think you go from an area of just when you're young, and I'm still there, honestly, wanting the cool shit, the cars, the houses, etc., to not being fulfilled by any of that. And fulfillment really is giving to others. And you ask any, I would say 99% of millionaires, billionaires, etc., what they get the happiest about, and it's giving to others. I mean, just take, we're in the middle of Thanksgiving and Christmas. Take, for example, Christmas. I mean, the more you give to people, and the gift of giving, everybody seems to be cheerful as fuck around Christmas. It's not because they're getting gifts. I mean, if you're a kid, yeah, it is. But it's for adults, it's like giving gifts to other people and giving gifts to family, etc. I think that's where people get that feeling of fullness and fulfillment from, is giving to others. And you're right, those people who have a ton of money and they give a lot of it away, whether it to be to their building their high school a field, or donating to charities, or helping build houses in low income areas, they feel the most fulfilled. And they'll say they will say they feel the most fulfilled. And that was a big part of what I was unhappy about in February of 2018 was I did a lot of outreach. I mean, I went and worked with AMREF in Africa, and went to India to villages and stuff like that, did a lot of medical outreach and stuff like that. And I wasn't doing any medical outreach or any outreach at all at that point. So it was like, well, no wonder why I'm not fulfilled. I'm not doing anything to really improve anybody else's life but my own.
Right. Absolutely. And I think the kid, it's like Tony Robbins, the gift of giving is living, or something like that, somewhere along those lines. It's so true. It is absolutely true. So, okay. So you're working in the prison, and then?
So then I get into the Arte Syndicate. I'm still working in the prison. I'm saving up money to build an urgent care. I meet a few people in the Arte Syndicate, and everything changes my idea about business. I realized that urgent cares cost like $800,000 to build.
What?
And it's just like, okay, well, what can I do otherwise? I talked to a friend of mine who is in the Arte, it was in the Arte Syndicate last year. He needed a new medical director, and he asked me to be his medical director, and I told him no. I said, no, I'm not going to be your slave. I got into the Arte Syndicate to not work for anybody else anymore. I'm not trading one job for another. So he said, all right, well, how about you just take equity in my company instead? And I was like, wait, what? All right. So he just gave me some equity in his company,
Okay.
Brett Master. And so that's Genesis Lifestyle Medicine, and that's all our hormone therapy, peptides, aesthetics medicine stuff. We have 4 locations, 3 in the Denver area, 1 in Fort Collins in Colorado, 1 in Nashville, and then we just opened this one here in Las Vegas, and we're going to be opening one in Arizona and Scottsdale in January, and that's the hormone therapy side of it. The other business we built together was actually a stem cell clinics as well.
Okay.
So we started off just doing, honestly, stem cell clinics here in Las Vegas, which has been really good, and then in Scottsdale, Arizona as well, and Denver. So we have 3 Cell Spark, which is our regenerative medicine stem cell clinics.
Okay.
So now we're co-branding everything and doing both the hormone therapy and the hormone weight loss, erectile dysfunction, hair restoration, etc., with Genesis, and doing the stem cells and everything with Cell Spark in each of our locations.
Well, it kind of makes sense that you would marry the 2 together because they complement each other perfectly. So, for somebody out there listening in there, so give me an example of a good stem cell patient. Like what do you use primarily the stem cells for?
So really the best patients are the ones that have shoulder or knee injuries or a back injury. So shoulders or knees, those patients who are like have been told they're bone on bone and they have 0 cartilage left, or they have some small meniscus tear. Usually a surgery is going to either replace the joint, which 50% of people who get a joint replacement are going to need another joint replacement at some point in their life.
10 years about?
About 10 years. Some a lot sooner than that, but yeah, about 10 years.
Okay.
And then those patients who have small meniscus tears and things like that, a doctor's going to go in there and just cut out the half of the meniscus that's torn instead of repairing it, because it's much faster to cut it out rather than sit there and repair it. The recovery is a lot shorter, etc. However, that increases the amount of arthritis a patient will get faster because they have half the amount of meniscus, which is the shock absorber in the knee. Okay. So patients that have those, we inject stem cells into the area. The stem cells will help recruit the body's own stem cells and own growth factors to help heal up meniscus, help regrow cartilage in shoulders, help with rotator cuff tears, heal up muscles, ligaments, tendons. And then in the spine, it really helps reduce disc protrusions. So anybody who has slipped discs, it can really help reduce those by rebuilding the discs, helps with opening up nerve impingements. So usually there's a lot of inflammation, so it'll reduce the inflammation in that area of the nerve, as well as open up where the nerves are coming out, because it kind of strengthens the spine. So a lot of spine issues, we see a lot of motor vehicle accidents or people who have had chronic surgeries on the back and have buildup of scar tissue, because it can help remodel scar tissue as well in certain areas of the back. So we do it for all those types of injuries.
So what's interesting about that? So, the people listening already know that I've been in health and wellness for, over a decade. Mm-hmm. And so the importance of what Alex just said was, people that have back injuries, and I'm just telling you from my own experience too, I have issues with my back. And then secondly, working with patients / clients that have back issues has mm-hmm. always been a challenge, because I think I've met one person in my whole life that said the back injury or the back surgery fixed my back and I have 0 issues. One. Yeah. And that must have been a fluke, because I haven't met hardly any person that doesn't have as much or more issues with their back after having surgery. Why is that?
Yeah, it's because we don't understand enough about the body yet, I think. And a lot of back surgeons will tell you that it's about a 50-50 chance whenever you go into a surgery with backs. And especially issues that we have like spinal fusions. The problem is that you fuse two bones, and then after a while, the screws and stuff start to get loose. So in order to keep those tight, they go to the next level of the spine and fuse that. And then, the next level, and the next level, and so on. And it's just as we have osteoporosis, which is as, we're getting older and our bones are getting brittle, all that hardware is going to start to loosen and get worse and worse. And then if you are already at advanced age, already have bone issues, it's even harder to get a replacement hip, knee, any type of bracing in the back, spinal fusion, et cetera, to actually hold. So that's why I think we have so many failed surgeries, is that we don't have really strong bones that you're going into with a lot of patients that are really, really damaged and have issues like that. And I used to do it too. I used to just inject the back or just inject shoulders with numbing medication. Great. But studies show that a patient will get 10 times the amount of cortisone that's probably effective. And that 10 times the amount of cortisone in an injection is really eating away cartilage and eating away bone, damaging it. So we're speeding up. We're helping you feel better, but all we're doing is blocking the pain. We're not improving anything. So when that blockage of pain goes away, you're already worse than what you were at the beginning, because you're just going to wear and tear and wear and tear and wear and tear rather than regenerate it and go backwards. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the stem cell, so by injecting stem cells in an area like the back, like you said, it recruits your own growth hormone or your both all. So I guess it's similar to, or maybe I'm wrong, but what is it that the umbilical cord has? Is that stem cell? Is that why people freeze the umbilical cord?
Yeah, so that's what we use. We use umbilical cord stem cells. So we use a mixture of both the umbilical cord tissue and the umbilical cord blood. So it's two different types of stem cells. There's hematopoietic from the blood and mesenchymal from the actual tissue. And the mesenchymal cells are the ones that can actually turn into chondrocytes and cartilage and stuff like that, a very small amount. But the rest of the amount, especially with hematopoietic stem cells, can help recruit the growth factors and help use the mesenchymal stem cells to regrow bone and tissue and things like that. So there used to be an idea that all stem cells turned into cartilage or turned into something in the joint or in the back, and that's just not true. It's a very small amount. And it depends on who you talk to. Everybody will argue something different because there's always some new research coming out, and it's a fairly new medicine in the United States, although it's been studied 30 plus years in other countries. So we're looking at a lot of the other countries' research based off of how we treat people. And so it's been around for, decades, and people don't actually realize that. They still think we're experimenting on patients, but we're not.
Sure. So what about the hormone side of it? What would you tell, can you kind of give us a quick idea of what that looks like?
Absolutely. So the hormone therapy came about from people who are getting older, and they say, oh, well, I have aches and pains. That's just normal. I'm getting older. It's not. That's just the thing. Like, people think that getting older, you automatically are supposed to have aches, pains, breakdown of joints, like be in a walker or use a cane as you get older. That's not normal aging. And that's not aging that you want to have. So we like to keep patients as young as possible. We keep their hormone levels at a normal level for a 20 to 30-year-old. We keep their growth hormone levels at normal levels for a 20, 30-year-old. So we help people age better. And when you have normal hormones, all those little aches and pains and things like that and your ability to regenerate, they all improve. They all get better. So we have people that have arthritis all over their body. They normalize their hormones. Their arthritis goes away. Well, it's because they're able to regenerate better, and their hormones are actually in a homeostasis rather than all over the place, up and down. People who are exhausted all the time. It may not just be entrepreneurship and stress that makes you exhausted. It may be your hormones. And really, anyone after the age of 35 you start to really drop off the deep end when it comes to your hormones.
Yeah.
So almost everybody qualifies for hormones after the age of 35 to normalize you up. I mean, I was 30 when I got my hormones checked, and my testosterone was 105, and it's normally supposed to be 400 to 600.
Sure.
So I thought I was just tired all the time.
Yeah, I was in the same exact boat. I think mine was 90. I mean, it was terrible.
Wow.
It was so bad. And people don't, it's like you said, people believe that, well, it's just age and that's why I'm tired, or I work a lot, that's why I'm tired. But that's really, there's a damn good chance that's not the case.
Yeah, misery loves company. You
Yeah.
just start to think like, oh, well, this is just me. This is how life's going to be. No, it's not. So we like to improve that part of people's lives.
Absolutely. And so you do that through both testosterone, and you mentioned the peptides. What is it? Samorlin, ipamorelin?
Kind of all of the above. We use a mix depending on the patient. We like a lot of CJC with ipamorelin. That's kind of the anti-aging mixture that you could take forever. Sermorelin is more of the like increasing your growth hormone and muscles. We have ones BPC 157 and TB 500 for healing factors and stuff that we can use with stem cells to help heal patients up. So there's something like, I think there's about 70 or 80 already out for peptides. And if people are wondering what peptides is, insulin is a peptide. So there's already a 70 or 80 out, and I think there's like 7,000 that are currently being formulated and studied by the FDA, et cetera. So there's going to be a lot more coming out, and they're a lot safer because these are amino acids that are signaling molecules rather than straight up synthetic hormones that you're replacing in people.
Right.
So we use testosterone, and then we also use bioidentical hormones in the form of pellets, which really
Sure.
reduce your own production as well.
So so I've done both.
Okay.
Obviously, well, I guess it's not obvious because we actually didn't do pellets at our clinic, but I have done both. And my experience with pellets have been, first of all, it's a process, right? It's a process to have to go in and get your ass cheek cut open, da da da. But then, when the pellets actually kick in, and I would say it's a 2 to 3 week time frame.
Mm-hmm.
But mine usually would last, 2 good months. Going on a third month would start to taper off, and that is not what was sold to me.
Yeah,
What was sold to
because
me
you're
was
probably very active, right?
I am, but the guy knew that, and so either way, so it would be about every 3 months. Is that what you see normally?
Yeah, so I tell my patients that are very sedentary, where they don't do anything, they don't do a lot of activity, they're exhausted all the time, they're just trying to be normal and not working out every day or not running or etc. I'd say you're going to last about 5 to 6 months.
Sure.
Those athlete patients that are like really athletic, hitting the gym hard every day, etc., I say you're probably going to get at most a good 4 months.
Yeah.
That's at most. And probably less than that. So every 3 to 4 months, you'll need repeat pelleting.
Sure. Now, do you do vitamin therapy at your clinics or your?
We do some vitamins. We don't do a ton. We do ALA, B12, MIC, and I think L-leucine right now.
Okay.
We might do more vitamin therapy, but we don't do a ton.
But is it intra
IV?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do both IV and intramuscular.
It's pretty. I mean, I'll tell you. We didn't do that. We didn't do it at my clinic, but we were close. I think that it's probably the new way to really it's of course to fix a hangover or really just to feel good. And what would you say? How often would you say somebody would need to come and do that? Once a week, once a month, once?
For vitamin therapy, really, you should probably do it about once a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your body will chew through the vitamins like crazy, especially when you start to feel good and you start to be more active or do more things. Your body will really chew through it, so you're going to want to do it every week to keep you normal.
Do you offer any kind of anti-aging in your vitamin therapy?
like stem cells, stuff like that.
Well, like I know that insulin growth factor one, people
Hmm.
put that in their vitamin bag, so to speak.
Yeah, sometimes we'll do it. Most of the time, actually, what we'll do is we'll support the IVs with peptides because we feel like the peptides, one, are safer for the patient, and two, will give them a better long-term results rather than just slamming them once a week with it.
Okay, so so you wouldn't normally put it in the vitamin therapy. Okay.
We don't at this point. We might in the future, but we don't at this point.
Well, it's interesting because, and the reason really I ask is because I don't know how you would dose something like, I don't know how you would dose a
Yeah.
vitamin bag with Simorelin or Ipamorelin or BPC, whatever.
Yeah, you really can't. It's really difficult too. And a lot of those medications are either SQ or intramuscular. So if you do them in the IV, you could hurt somebody.
Damn, I
Two,
didn't even think of that.
you don't really know how they're going to work or if they're going to work.
Right. Shit, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you don't take any kind of hormone therapy in a vein. I
Nope,
mean,
not at all.
um, wow. Okay, that makes, yeah. I didn't even think about that part of it. Okay, so so it's so interesting. So now you do you still own the house that you rent?
No, I sold it actually.
Okay.
So I guess back to the story. Around So this was the RTA. We got in the RTA in July of last year, started changing ideas. Lewis and I had the conversation about scrubs in October of last year. Then Brent and I had the conversation about being his medical director in like April or February of
This year.
2019, this year of 2019. Oh yeah, it is still this year. Ah,
Yeah.
shit. They're getting tighter and tighter. Of February of this year. So we had that discussion of equity at that time. So as of June, we had the PC threads almost ready to go. I was the medical director over there in their Genesis Lifestyle Medicine, and then also had CellSpark planned out and ready to go. So August 1st, we launched the scrubs. We launched the Genesis, or August 1st, we launched the scrubs and the um, CellSpark
Right.
of this year. A month later, we opened the Denver clinic, and 2 weeks after that, we opened the Arizona clinic for CellSpark. So this is like mid-September. And then, so those have been running since then. And recently, within the last 2 weeks, we just opened Genesis here in Las Vegas, and then plan to open Genesis in January in our Scottsdale, Arizona clinic. And then we'll be expanding to a Dallas location in the Dallas Star, where the Cowboys have their practice field.
Very
So we'll
cool.
be opening up in the Baylor Research Institute there, a clinic there.
Sweet.
Yeah, so things are moving really, really fast, and it's been great. It's been really just completely changed my life. We sold our house and moved out here to Las Vegas in July of this year.
Damn. So
Yeah,
2 years ago, none of this was even a thought.
yeah, at all. Honestly, probably 18 months ago, I would say none of this was even a thought.
That's fucking crazy. I mean, and
Yeah,
you guys listening, you have no idea what it takes to put together just one location uh, for and you said you're over four. It takes months of planning and there's so much thought that has to go into
yeah,
right down to the fact there has to be a fucking sink in every room.
yep.
Like, it's shit like that people don't think about. They don't know because it's not their field. But it's a lot of planning that goes into this.
Yeah, it is a lot of planning. And actually, once we got to the point of having the three cell sparks open and we have the six already Genesis open, we're like, okay, we started to get ahead of ourselves, and we're like, okay, now we're starting to stumble a little bit because we're just pulled in too many directions at once. Let's stop and let's revisit just making these clinics really, really good and having a really, really good, because it's slow at the beginning. You're like, okay, we want more. We want more. Let's build another clinic. We have the money. Let's build another clinic. We have the money. And it's like, okay, well, then you have to staff them, and you have to make sure that the staff is doing exactly what you want them to do. And it was just me and my clinic director who was staffing a lot of these. Plus we have some staff in Denver. It was just like, okay, well, we're being pulled in all different directions. We can't really focus on making one really good. Let's focus on making one, Las Vegas, really good right now, coming up with all the pathways and all the different, how would I say it, charts of how to do this and this and this and this and this in this stepwise fashion. And then we can roll that out to the other clinics and hire people to do those jobs. It's like McDonald's. You take McDonald's, how can a 16-year-old kid be a fucking manager in a McDonald's? Well, because they have everything clearly put out in their manuals to where you can put anybody in any job and they know exactly what to do. That's why they're all built exactly the same, too. You know, you walk in, you got the fryer on the left and the chicken nugget machine is on the right, and etc. You know, I never worked at McDonald's, so don't bitch me out for not knowing where the McDonald's shit is. But they're all built exactly the same, and they all run exactly the same because it's the same manual for all of them. So we're going back to like, let's build the same manual for this one, and we'll just roll it out to all of them. And so it's going to be really slow building that first one, and slow relatively, I mean months. But then once you have that slow one built, then you could pop them up every single freaking month for eternity, because they're all going to run exactly the same.
And this is one of the things I think that is so important about that process and making them all the same is, guess what? Now, if Corey as a patient wants to go to the Las Vegas facility, or I want to go to the Tennessee facility, I'm going to get the same treatment.
100%.
It's not like I'm going to go to one and they're going to say, oh, you know, you need X, Y, Z, and then I go to a different location and they disagree. It's all the same.
Yep.
Super.
100%.
I love that. That's fantastic. So, okay. So, let me think. What else was I going to ask you about? So, your next location is when?
So our next Genesis location is going to be in Arizona, in Scottsdale. We already have the Cell Spark, which is the stem cell. So our next hormone therapy will be there in Arizona, and then our next combined one, because now we're going to just do both hormone therapy and stem cells with everything we built from now on. Our next combined one will be January, February of next year at the Dallas Star in Frisco, Texas.
That's right. So are you franchising them?
So we do kind of a weird franchise. We don't do the traditional franchise where people pay a franchise fee and they have to buy into it, etc. What we do is we as partners talk with whoever is interested in investing. And usually it's not just an investor. It's somebody who's also going to help run the clinics in their general area. We say, okay, this is where we want to build the clinic. And instead of paying us an investment fee or a franchise fee, what they do is they pay for the clinic to be created. And that could be anywhere between really 20 and 50K on the very, very, very high end. Okay. So it's not a huge
investment.
It's not a huge investment. It's 20 to 50K to hire everybody, et cetera. We as a company go and train everybody. We give them that pathway to succeed. We help ordering all the meds, setting up the clinic, everything that they need, training everybody in the clinic to do exactly what they need to do. And then we just get them running. And however that person wants to run that clinic, whether they want to take all the, profits out and give themselves salary, or what we recommend is, hey, these things will run themselves after a few months. So just let it run itself. Then the profits you just put into another one, and then let it run itself. And then the profits you put into another one. So you can you can have 4 or 5 of these things in the same area, and they essentially will all pay for themselves.
All right.
And
So I'm
build
on
them,
the, go
we
ahead.
can build them to the point where you can make a year out of each one. On the low end, $1 million a year. On the high end, 3 to 6 million. So we're trying to get them each to be about $3 million a year.
It's mind blowing. And I didn't even ask these questions for a particular reason. I asked the question so people would be enlightened about what you do.
Yeah.
But what's fucking completely mind blowing is that when I shut down my clinic, that's a whole long story in itself. We didn't have the guidance that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so Corey had to learn to create to run this whole damn clinic by myself.
Yep.
So when I stopped that, I have a good friend who works for a large pharmaceutical company in New York that does stem cell.
Oh, nice.
And so I contacted him because he's been a friend for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, this is what happened. What the fuck? And he was like, I need you to look into something. And I said, okay. He said, I want you to look into synergenics. And I know you know what synergenics is. And he said, Corey, this is the thing. He said, I don't like the way they do their shit. He was like, but they have a good concept. He was like, I've been a member there for years. He said, I would love to bury them. Thank God I didn't say this guy's name. I would love to bury them because, quite frankly, it's like dealing with a bunch of assholes.
Yeah.
And he said, what I want you to do is figure out how we can maybe either franchise a model from them or something along those lines. He said, but I want you to look into how it is to start that. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
Long story short, I climbed myself to, I don't remember the guy's name. It doesn't matter at this point what his name is, but he was the guy that I needed to talk to that made those decisions. And usually without being a doctor, you don't get that far.
Yeah.
And so I tell you this whole story because you and I are clearly going to have a conversation outside of this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's too many dots that just got connected.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if any of that made any sense to the people listening or not, but the point is that the fucking universe has just answered a whole bunch of questions for me that I didn't know if there would ever be answered.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and I'll delve into that at a later time with you.
Yeah.
Alex,
sounds great.
God, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about all the stuff that you've done. And I guess the biggest takeaway for me has been that, if you think that you're at a point in your life where you are going to be at the same point forever, you just have to think a little bit bigger than that, because the universe's plan is so much bigger than what your plan is for yourself. Because if it were up to you, you'd still be at the prison.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of one of the things that I like to tell people a lot is you look at people in the Arte Syndicate and you think they've been killing it their whole lifetime. But when you start to ask them, honestly, I would say at least 50% of them have not had their business for more than 3 years. And if you go back 3 years ago, they were living out of their cars. They were renting a bedroom in somebody else's house. They were, shitting in a bucket in a container because that's where they lived, living off food stamps, etc. So these guys that are killing it and ballers now weren't like that 3 years ago. So it can move very, very fast. You just have to realize that the opportunities are going to be there, and the little whispers are the opportunities, and those are the ones you need to run towards rather than just be focused on one idea. Always be open to the next thing that may happen.
I totally agree. And that's a great piece of advice. So with that, Alex, let's wrap up. Thank you so much. I do appreciate you coming on, and I'll DM you about setting up another time for us to talk, because it's super important that you and I have a further conversation.
Absolutely, man. And thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.